You are listening to Julia's Trucking Cafe News Hour. Welcome to Julia's Trucking Cafe Trucking News Hour. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy that you're here and that you want to listen to the trucking news. As always, I have lots of news to get to, so let's get right to it. Do you know who this is? You remember this face from about 2 years ago? If you're new to the show and you don't know who this is, you don't know who I'm talking about, stay tuned. Later on in the show, I'll be introducing a new segment, Rookie Roundtable, where I'll be discussing this gentleman, use the term loosely, and what's been happening with him in the news in the last couple of months. Now, let's start the show and let's get to the news. In our first story, California Highway Patrol does whatever it takes to keep trucks moving. A California Highway Patrol trooper was caught on camera giving a trucker a helpful nudge along a snowy roadway. And actually, it's been a couple of troopers. This was shared by their truckie division on December 12th, last week. In the clip, you could see a trooper pushing a semi uphill on a snow-covered roadway. It isn't the first time that California Highway Patrol truckie troops have helped out stuck trucks with a little push. And you could view this video in the show notes that I promise I will have on the website at juliastruckingcafe.com, podcast, then go to show notes. And in this next story, officials warn of more snow to come after weekend of crashes spurs road closures. This is all the snow and everything that happened last week. And of course, like always, I'm always a week late. Can't report on the news when you're trying to drive down the road. That's called distracted driving. Anyway, back to the story. Portions of Interstate 84 were closed throughout the weekend of the 13th after snowy conditions sparked a number of crashes in Oregon. Actually, it's over the 11th and 12th of December, The crashes induced closures happening over the weekend. Like I mentioned, December 11th and Sunday, December 12th. According to the local news, westbound lanes of I-84 were shut down late Saturday night in La Grande due to crashes, but the closure was later moved to Baker City and then to Ontario due to a lack of safe truck parking in La Grande and Baker City. Oregon Department of Transportation warns that more snow was expected later last week. And if you've ever been listening to my show, you know that I always try to keep everybody on a heads up of all the recalls that are going on with different truck lines or tires or anything like that. And we have another one. Hundreds of Western Star and Freightliner trucks are recalled for unapproved tires. Daimler Trucks North America will recall more than 400 trucks for non-compliant tires. They recently announced this recall for certain models of 2011 and to 2022 Freightliner SD108, Freightliner SD114, 2016 Freightliner Coronado, and 2011 to 2022 Western Stars 4900, 6900, 2013 to 2022 Western Star 4700, and 2022 49X vehicles. According to the recall documents, the vehicles affected by the recall are equipped with tires and rims are not approved and rated for these vehicles from the Tire and Rim Association or the tire manufacturer, are not in compliance with FMCSA safety standards. Officials say that the unapproved tires could lead to performance issues and increase the risk of a crash. You think? A total of over 400 vehicles are affected by this recall. Truck owners will be notified by mail on January 15th. A remedy for the defect is still in development. It's called change the suckers out, people. What's the issue? It's not that complicated. It's just because it's complicated because it's going to cost the tire manufacturers or Freightliner and everybody money to put different tires on the vehicles. And in our next story, 118 mile an hour wind gusts and ice shut down 2 Wyoming highways over last weekend. Extremely high winds and icy conditions forced the closure of 2 highways in Wyoming. Both Interstate 25 and Interstate 80 were closed for portions of the 11th and the 12th from Cheyenne to Douglas and between Rollins and Laramie. Both have been reopened as of Sunday night, the 12th. According to the local news, wind gusts as high as 118 miles an hour were recorded in Clark, with 76 mile an hour gusts recorded in Casper. The high winds even caused a collapse of a central Wyoming fairgrounds, leaving metal debris scattered across nearby roadways. The DOT reported long lines of semi-trucks waiting the reopening of the interstates, along with several jackknifed rigs. Temperatures were expected to reach the 50s by this last Tuesday, but more snow was in the forecast for this last Wednesday. So I hope everybody got out of there that was stuck in that mess. I hope y'all got out of there okay. And up next, truckers involved in the relief efforts over in Kentucky for those tornadoes are exempt from hours of service rules and weight restrictions. Hours of service and weight restrictions have been temporarily suspended in Kentucky for drivers involved in delivering fuel, clearing debris, or restoring power. Kentucky Transportation Secretary signed the order effective until the 14th of January. The order not only removes drivers involved in relief efforts of hours of service restrictions, but waives permit fees for overweight or overdimensional vehicles. Cranes, track hose, excavators, that kind of thing. Carriers must still comply with safety requirements and have a copy of the order inside the truck or the cab. Quote, our cabinet is ready to help ensure that needed relief gets quickly to areas that have lost electric power and otherwise are experiencing hardships due to the outbreak of tornadoes, high winds, and flash flooding, cited in the emergency declaration declared by the governor of Kentucky. And you're going to love this one. In this story, a man tries to steal a semi-truck using a BB gun. Ooh, that's real scary. A man was arrested Monday after allegedly trying to steal a semi-truck armed with only a BB gun. The incident happened on the 13th in Kennewick, Washington at around 1:45 in the morning, Pacific time. A truck driver called police to report that someone was trying to break into his truck in the 1100 block of Columbia Center near the target. Police arrived almost immediately and witnessed the suspect pointing what appeared to be a gun at the truck driver. Officers then instructed the suspect to drop the weapon, which he did before trying to flee the scene on foot. They quickly caught the man and recognized him as a man with mental health issues that they had dealt with in the past. Police soon realized that the gun the suspect had been using was a BB gun. He's lucky he didn't get his ass shot. The suspect was then booked into the county jail for first-degree assault, first-degree robbery, and on a previous warrant. Name was not released, but police say that he is receiving mental health treatment. And in all those high winds, a trucker's in critical condition in this story after a semi tumbles off of a slick bridge. Truck driver's in the hospital after tumbling off of a bridge in Dallas. This happened December 14th around 12:30 in the morning. Semi-truck was heading westbound on the Woodall-Rogers Bridge just before the Interstate 35 exit when it lost control on the wet road, went over the side of the bridge where it landed on the DART rail lines about 40 feet below. It then caught fire with the truck driver trapped inside. Firefighters worked to extinguish the flames and rescue the driver, who was trapped inside of the truck for nearly an hour. The truck driver was then rushed to a nearby hospital with critical injuries, including burns. The crash affected the orange and the green DART rail lines and blocked one train heading to Carrollton. Not clear if there were passengers on that train at the time of the wreck. No further information on the driver's condition was released at the time of the writing of the article. And up next, New Jersey has once again earned the title of worst truck traffic bottleneck in America. You think? A New Jersey highway has once again been dubbed the worst truck bottleneck in America. The yearly report was put out by TRIP, a nonprofit transportation research group, and places Interstate 95 at Route 4 in Fort Lee as the worst truck traffic bottleneck in the U.S. The American Transportation Research Institute places this exact spot at the top of their traffic bottleneck list as well. According to the report, the average speeds on that portion of roadway are between 30 and 39 miles an hour, and that's when traffic is moving. While this bottleneck and others like it are not the cause of the nation's current supply chain issues, here we go, they certainly don't do much to alleviate them. Quote, in the short term, improving the performance of the nation's supply chain will require addressing the many supply chain challenges that are restricting the timely movement of freight, end quote. TRIP executive director states, ensuring that the nation's long-term goals for economic growth and quality of life are met will require investing adequately in an efficient transportation system that will provide the U.S. with a reliable supply chain. That's funny. Before this damn administration, we didn't have no problem with efficient transportation system and supply chain issues. Anyway, I'm not going to read the rest of it. It's just want to make me barf. And yes, I'm being opinionated on this show, if you can't already tell. Just tired of everybody drinking the Kool-Aid. And then up next in this story, here's what you need to know about the entry-level driver training rule going into effect in February of 2022. Starting in early 2022, some CDL and endorsement applicants will be required to meet the new training standards due to an upcoming FMCSA rule change. Starting in February, the rule will go into effect. The ELDT rule establishes minimum requirements for entry-level driver training standards for training providers and CDL applicants. The rule will apply to the applicants who want to obtain a Class A or Class B CDL for the first time, upgrade an existing Class B CDL to a Class A, or obtain a school bus passenger or hazardous materials endorsement for the first time. Well, an old trucker like me don't have to worry about all this. These are only for first-timers, so there's not much to worry about there. But if you're thinking about coming into this industry, pay attention. These applicants will be required to obtain training from a provider listed on the FMCSA Trainer Provider Registry. So in other words, you can't just have some Joe Schmuck Blow teach you how to drive a truck. You have to be registered with the FMCSA. This training must be completed before taking a CDL skills test, or if the driver is applying for a H endorsement, the knowledge test. There is no minimum number of hours required for either behind-the-wheel training or knowledge training under the new rule. The ELDT rule only requires that applicants seeking a CDL will be required to demonstrate proficiency in knowledge training and behind-the-wheel training on a driving range and on a public road, with training obtained from an instructional program that meets FMCSA standards. The rule is not retroactive, so individuals who were issued a CDL or an SP or H endorsement prior to February 7th of 2022 are not required to complete training for the respective CDL or endorsement. The ELD final rule was published at the Federal Register on December 7, 2016. Compliance date was pushed back from February 7th of 2020 to February 7th, 2022. In part to allow state driver's license agencies time to update their IT infrastructure, internal procedures, and budgeting allocation to properly record driver course completion information. And sadly, a man who was walking was struck by a semi in Ohio truck stop parking lot. Ohio police say that a man was fatally struck by a semi-truck while walking in the lot at a Love's truck stop. This happened on December 12th, about 10 in the morning, in Hubbard, Ohio. I tell you guys all the time, slow the F down. That means in parking lots. According to the local news outlet, truck driver called 911 after realizing that he struck a pedestrian near the fuel island. A pedestrian who is believed to have also been another truck driver died at the scene. The victim was not identified, but according to the report, he was a white male in his 60s from Illinois. Hubbard Township police say they have believed the fatal pedestrian strike was an accident. No charges were filed at the time. The incident remains under investigation. And a lot of times, I'm short. Okay, so this happened at the fuel island. And I'm going to go into a little bit of a editorial here. I'm short. I'm only 5'5", okay? And a lot of times, when you're not paying attention and you're going to pull up, like I have a reefer, so I have to pull up for reefer, and guys and gals are walking in front of my truck, you look up in the windshield, see if there's somebody there. Just glance as you're walking by a truck. I always glance and see if there's somebody, gonna pull up in the fuel island to pull ahead. Most guys just park in the fuel island take their 30-minute break or whatever. But if you're not, then you're a decent driver, and I should say respectable driver, and you're gonna pull up to give somebody else room, be aware of people walking back and forth in front of your truck. I try to stay away from the very front of the hood of the truck, walk out 3 or 4 feet so I'm seen. Like I said, because I'm short. It happened in the morning, so it was daylight. A lot of times people wear dark clothes at night. They're supposed to be well lit. You always have to pay attention to your surroundings constantly. Don't just, jump in the driver's seat and hit the brake, release the brakes, and throw it and drive. Because there's the men that are walking and people, I should say, that are walking in front of my truck, they're oblivious that I'm trying to pull up to fuel my reefer. I have to watch for pedestrian traffic going back and forth. I catch that almost every time I fuel. People just don't look up and look at the truck windshield. I'm always observant. And, if somebody's going to, is in their truck and they're not watching for me, I stop. And then they'll wave me on. And crossing a parking lot as well. Truck is not automatically going to stop for you. You don't step out because, and somebody's barreling around the damn corner. And like I reported to months ago, is that somebody flipped the truck going around a corner too damn fast at a truck stop. So we all need to slow down. We all need to be aware of our surroundings. We all need to look up in windshields. We all need to pay attention. Everybody, whether you're fueling or not fueling. Okay? Thanks for listening to a little bit of a rant. Otherwise, this guy would have never died. And next up, again, 2 people are killed in an unexplained head-on crash between semis. 2 drivers were killed on last Tuesday morning after colliding head-on in Utah. This happened about 4:30 in the morning, December 14th, near Moab, Utah. An International was heading north on State Route 191 when it drifted over the center line into the southbound lanes. A Kenworth heading south was unable to avoid the wayward rig, and the 2 trucks collided head-on to the southbound lane. The driver of the International was killed in the impact. The driver of the Kenworth was treated on scene but was pronounced dead before they could be transported to a hospital. The drivers' identities were not released at the time of the writing of this article. Traffic was blocked in the area for several hours while officials worked to clear the wreckage and investigate the accident, but the area has since been reopened. The exact reason for the accident was not released, but officers do warn travelers to use caution in the area as gusty winds plagued the area all last week. And in this story, a semi-truck manages to strike a moving train, causing $140,000 in damages, suffering minor injuries. Officers are investigating after a semi-truck managed to strike a train as it rolled along the tracks in Iowa. This happened around 8:30 in the morning on Tuesday, December 14th, near Sioux Center, Iowa. 59-year-old truck driver Harvard Stanbutte was hauling a flatbed trailer loaded with hay eastbound on 360th Street when he collided with a moving train as it headed north at the railroad crossing. Harvard suffered only minor injuries, but the collision caused $40,000 in damage to the rig and $100,000 to the train. It's not clear if any citations were issued, and the exact reason behind the collision is still not clear. And sadly, a 9-month-old is dead after a packed SUV collided with a semi. A 9-month-old baby is dead after an SUV collided with a semi in Texas last weekend. This crash happened on Sunday, December 12th in Arlington, Texas, but police were not made aware that the young boy had died until Tuesday. According to the local news, an SUV carrying 7 people, including a 9-month-old boy, sitting in a passenger's lap, was traveling eastbound along U.S. Highway 287 when it suddenly veered into the path of an oncoming semi. The rig then struck the SUV, sent it skidding it off the road, where it rolled multiple times down an embankment. The force of the impact ejected the young boy and injured 5 others. Although their injuries were considered non-life-threatening, all 6 were transported to a nearby hospital. The truck driver was also not seriously hurt. Police were then notified on Tuesday, December 14th, that the baby had since died. It is still investigating the reasons behind the crash. And in this story, New York City mayor unveils a plan to push oversized and polluting diesel trucks out of the city. New York City officials unveiled a plan for a new freight network designed to restructure freight distribution and reduce over-reliance on diesel trucks. The, quote, Delivering Green, quote, plan would provide $38 million in new funding to support water freight and sustainable last-mile solutions to reduce the number of diesel trucks operating in New York City. I find this laughable. What do they think, water freight? Since when does freight float? Number one. Oh, I'm sorry, not that what kind of water freight. But if you're going to use barges, what do you think they run on? They damn sure don't run on electric. They run on diesel. So you're just, oh, don't look over here, look over there. This plan was put forth by Mayor Bill de Blasio. The New York City Department of Transportation, New York City Economic Development. The DOT there estimates that truck traffic across the Hudson River has increased by 50% between January of 2020 and September of 2021. You think? Let's see. Can we say COVID? Can we say people were quarantined to their homes? Can we see that people were ordering everything online because they had to stay home and that deliveries and everything went up? Oh no, that couldn't have happened. Back to the article. Without action, the increase in freight demands will result in tens of thousands of more trucks crossing into the city every day, while the city's network of streets and bridges remains fixed. Such unchecked growth in truck delivery is simply untenable for community streets and the environment, officials say. They also say while 90% of New York City goods are currently moved by truck, the plan offers short-term, long-term solutions to move more freight by water, rail, by other more sustainable modes of transportation, including cargo bikes and other small green vehicles for last-mile deliveries. Yeah, good luck with that. Quote, as our demand for freight continues to increase, we cannot continue the historic mistake of relying on more oversized and polluting diesel trucks that'll handle the load, said the DOT commissioner. They destroy our infrastructure, damage the public health and quality of life in our neighborhoods, clog our already overcrowded streets, and hasten climate change. Why don't you get cars off the frickin' streets? Why don't you provide more parking for people with cars, electric cars or whatever, to run around the streets? Why don't you turn around and ban cars, period? Oh, God, I can't do that. Back to the article. We must change our course. We have delivered a thoughtful blueprint for the next 5 years to do just that. We are laying out a vision to reclaim New York City's original highways, our harbors and rivers, to bring goods into the city and shifting to cargo bikes and other smaller green vehicles to complete the journey to our doorsteps. I'm tired. Are you tired? I'm tired already. Let's take a break from this. I'm not going to read the rest of the article. There again, drinking more Kool-Aid. If you want to read the rest of the article, you can at juliastrucketcafe.com/podcast/show notes. Now after all that, let's take a short break. This episode of Julia's Truck at Cafe is brought to you by My Patriot Supply. As truck drivers, we all know what it's like to be at a shipper's or receiver's and have to wait to be loaded for hours on end. Am I right? Especially produce coolers and paper mills. That's why you need to be prepared with extra food in your truck, especially with the bad weather coming in, like it is over here in Kansas, up in the Dakotas and Minnesota. 90 was shut down, Interstate 94 was shut down, along with 29. What are you going to do if there's no food and a truck stop was without power? That's why you need to stay prepared with My Patriot Supply. Now, it's not what you're thinking. My Patriot Supply is delicious emergency food. They have food kits that are good up to 25 years. They come in a slimline tote that you can easily store in your food pantry or under your bunk. I can speak from experience. After living through Hurricane Katrina, we were without power for 10 days, me, my mother, and son, and I. If it weren't for the MREs that were flown into us, we wouldn't have any food. There was 4 60-foot pine trees that broke in half during that storm and crossed my driveway and landlocked me in. That's when My Patriot Supply would have come in handy. If I knew then what I know now about My Patriot Supply, I definitely have some of this food stockpiled in my pantry. Now, for a limited time, you could get a 1-week supply of food in a handy and neat-looking ammo can, like you see here, for just $39. Look at all that food you get. It's a week's worth of breakfast, lunch, and dinners, just for $39. How do you get it? Where do you go, do you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Just go to my website at juliastrucketcafe.com, click on the Emergency Food Supply tab, scroll down and click on any of the images to find out more information and get yours today. They even offer gluten-free food for under $100. Winter weather is here. What would you do if the interstate was shut down, just like I was talking about? You need to get My Patriot Supply and get it today. And in this story, a man is rescued after getting trapped in a trailer full of dried corn. A man was rescued after getting stuck inside a trailer loaded with dried corn. This happened December 15th around 4 in the afternoon at Iker Farm in Walnut Hill, Florida. According to the local news, a man became stuck from the waist down inside a hopper being loaded with corn and was unable to free himself. Corn is like quicksand, said the public safety director. Movement could cause a person to sink deeper and deeper. In order to complete the rescue, firefighters placed boards and ladders over the top of the load of corn to avoid sinking themselves, and then used a large grain vacuum and 5-gallon buckets to remove the corn around the man until he was finally freed. The man was evaluated by EMS but was not transported for further treatment because he was okay on the scene. And up next, out-of-state couple is robbed while attempting to purchase a semi-truck. A couple was robbed on December 15th, Wednesday afternoon, around 2:30, during what they thought was going to be a business transaction. This happened in St. Louis. The couple flew from California to St. Louis to purchase a semi-truck that they had found on Facebook on behalf of their employer. The couple then went to meet the man claiming to be selling a semi in the 600 block of Chain of Rocks Drive. Instead of a business transaction, the couple were met with a man who approached them and attempted to take the male buyer's backpack, which was full of cash, for the purchase. The male buyer refused to give up the backpack, but the suspect lifted his shirt, revealed a knife in his waistband, so the couple handed over the bag. The couple were not injured in the incident, and no further information on the robbery had been released. OMG. The goofy thing people do just to save money. Man. And in this story, sadly, 11 were hurt in a 35-vehicle pileup on a Florida interstate. Florida officials say that all lanes were open following a major pileup involving passenger vehicles and semi-trucks in Jacksonville. This happened December 16th, Thursday afternoon, around 3 in the afternoon, on I-95 southbound at Airport Road. According to Jacksonville Fire Rescue, 35 vehicles collided over a half-mile stretch of the interstate. The initial crash began when a car rear-ended another car in the right lane of the interstate. A semi-truck driver reacted by swerving to the center lane, striking a second vehicle. Striking a second semi. This triggered an initial crash involving 6 semi-trucks and 12 cars that ultimately led to several secondary crashes. Good grief. 11 people were transported to the hospital for various injuries. 2 people required extraction by firefighters. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and Florida Highway Patrol responded. The crash shut down all lanes of southbound I-95 for several hours, but the interstate was reopened by 9 p.m. that night. So if you were in Florida and you were on 95 around Jacksonville and wondering what the heck all that was about, that's what it was about. And you're going to love this. Biden's new, quote, trucking action plan does little to address the industry's actual issues, says OOIDA. The Biden administration announced its 90-day trucking action plan to attract new truck drivers and keep current drivers behind the wheel. But industry experts say the plan does little to address the actual issues pushing potential drivers out of the industry. The plan proposes providing resources for expediting and expanding the process of acquiring a CDL. Just what we frickin' need. Encouraging employers to implement apprenticeship programs to put more thoroughly trained drivers on the road, and even focuses on the recruitment of U.S. military veterans. But none of that appears to address the issues Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, affectionately known as OOIDA, executives believe are at the root of the apparent driver shortage, high turnover rates. We think the biggest problem as far as driver workforce is retention. They're putting so much emphasis on bringing in more drivers and not enough on what you do once they're in the field, how you get them to stay behind the wheel, how do you make the job prosperous for them and safe for them, and a lot of that is what's missing from the proposal. However, there's one aspect to the plan that OOIDA agrees with, a proposal to study the issues surrounding detention time. That's only one issue. Excuse me while I take a sip of coffee. Quote, the amount of time that they waste waiting to be loaded has increased exponentially. It's getting worse and worse and worse. If I'm a shipper or receiver and I've got this line of trucks and there's no incentive for me to load or unload them efficiently because I'm not losing anything financially, the drivers aren't being paid. Long believes that if drivers were to be paid for these wait times, shippers, receivers, and the entire industry would be incentivized to operate more efficiently because wasting drivers' time would mean money out of their own pockets. That's right. Charge it back to the shipper or receiver and hit them in their pocketbooks. That's the only way to do it. Back to the article. The Trucking Action Plan was put forth as part of the Supply Chain Disruptions Task Force, like we need another frickin' task force, created earlier this year to tackle supply chain problems spurred by COVID-19. Quote, trucking plays a critical role in the U.S. supply chain and economy. American truck drivers have been on the front lines of this pandemic, delivering goods to every corner of this country. A strong, stable, and safe trucking workforce that offers good-paying jobs to millions of truck drivers is critical lifeblood of our economy. But that's true, but yeah, that's why you're not doing anything about it. Anyway. And in this story, a truck driver in a fiery pileup crash that killed 3 in Nebraska is sentenced to 3 to 5 years. California-based truck driver has been sentenced to prison for a 2019 crash that killed 3 people in Nebraska. On December 15th, 36-year-old truck driver Kenneth Kratt from Madera, California, was sentenced to 3 to 5 years in prison in Buffalo County District Court. Kratt pleaded no contest to 3 felony manslaughter charges in October of 2021. The charges were issued following a fatal pileup that occurred at a construction zone eastbound I-80 in Buffalo County, Nebraska around 3 in the afternoon. Traffic was slow to the construction zone on I-80 near the Gibbon exit when Kratt's semi-truck rear-ended a 2017 Chevy Silverado pickup truck driven by Ryan, who was 37. His truck was also a Chevrolet Equinox driven by Scott, 54, pushing the vehicle under the trailer of another semi-truck. 7 vehicles were ultimately involved in the pileup. Silverado, pickup truck caught fire following the crash. The Ryan and Scott's Ryan's passenger, Daniel, 50, died as a result of the crash. Gaylor was also killed. 3 other people suffered injuries in the crash. Kratt himself wasn't seriously hurt. Nebraska State Police said that Kratt was traveling at speeds of 75 to 78 miles per hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone when the crash occurred. Kratt told the victims' families who appeared in court, "I'm truly sorry for what I've done. I have no excuse, no reason for what happened. I wish there was something I could do to take it back." According to the local news, Kratt faced up to 20 years on each felony manslaughter charge, which resulted in a 60-year sentence if charges ran consecutively instead of concurrently. Prosecutors requested the maximum sentence. The judge credited Kratt with 30 days of time served. And in this article, a truck is stuffed with immigrants passed through a government checkpoint prior to a fatal crash. A truck packed with illegals passed through an immigration checkpoint just before it crashed, killing 57. The fatal December 9th crash happened in Mexico along the Chipa de Corzo Gutierrez Highway and injured more than 100 people. Now footage from the government security cameras show the same truck passing through a toll plaza staffed with National Immigration Institute agents. In the footage, 2 vehicles can be seen parked in the lane next to the semi-truck in question. However, it does not appear that the rig was subjected to any sort of inspection at the plaza. Yeah, it's Mexico. It's the corruptest freaking country there is. Anyway, I'm not going to go any further on to that one either. This show is getting long enough. And in this story, Iowa troopers confirmed that a trucker was killed in a crash that was caused by high winds. Iowa state troopers say that a truck driver lost his life the week of December 8th when his truck was blown over near Walford, Iowa. They say 58-year-old Iowa-based truck driver Brian Jensen was southbound on Highway 151 when his vehicle was struck by a high gust of wind. The truck rolled onto its side and came to a stop in a ditch. Trooper said Jensen was ejected and died in the crash. He was not wearing a seatbelt. On Wednesday, dozens of trucks were blown over in multiple states by record high wind gusts, which is true. And up next, a bridge serving Washington closed indefinitely after a semi loses their load. A high-traffic bridge in Washington state has been shut down indefinitely after an incident when a semi-truck caused serious structural damage. This happened December 15th around 11:15 in the morning near Tukwila, Washington. According to the local news, a semi-truck hauling steel cables was crossing the bridge when it struck one of the overhead beams, spilling the load of cables and damaging one of the bridge supports. The Tukwila Police Department closed the bridge less than 30 minutes after the accident occurred. Due to damage sustained to the bridge, it will be closed for an unknown amount of time until engineers can inspect it. Until that inspection is complete, we cannot speculate on next steps, said the city administrator. Once we know more, we shall share the information with the broader community along with our plans moving forward. Prior to this accident, Federal Highway Authority had already deemed the 72-year-old bridge structurally deficient and functionally obsolete. And the city was already planning to replace the bridge by 2025. Now, though, the city is most interested in safely reopening the bridge as soon as possible, as the bridge serves as a major route for trucks heading to the BNSF railway yard and serves as many as 3,000 trucks and 7,000 cars a day. Railway says it's planning to continue normal operations, and many truckers are using a wooded Interstate 5 overpass to reach the yard. Although the BNSF spokesperson says that the route is not ideal due to a steep slope. Additionally, the city of Tukwila has an emergency alternate route plan should the bridge never reopen, which includes rerouting truck traffic over Steel Mill Bridge and residential traffic to South 115th Street. The city says this route would not be a long-term solution. Excuse me. And lastly, search of a truckload of auto parts leads to a record-breaking meth seizure at a border crossing. Officers with U.S. Customs and Border Protection recently seized thousands of pounds of meth from a tractor-trailer in Arizona. The drug seizure happened December 15th at Mariposa Commercial Facility in Tucson. Officers referred the 21-year-old Mexican truck driver for a secondary inspection as he attempted to enter the U.S. After a canine unit alerted to the truck, a physical search was conducted on the shipment of automotive parts. Officers discovered 470 packages of meth, weighing nearly 3,280 pounds, hidden within the auto parts shipment. They seized the drugs and the truck. The driver was placed under arrest and handed over to immigration. They called this a record-breaking drug seizure for Tucson. More than drug seizure, stuff that's been caught, but what about the stuff that makes it through? So stay tuned for up next is the Rookie Roundtable. Welcome to Rookie Roundtable. In this edition of the Rookie Roundtable, we're going to be talking about the top story that's made the news lately. How Mr. Aguilera has been sentenced to 110 years in prison. For those of you that are new to the show and don't know who Aguilera is and haven't heard of him, Mr. Aguilera is a 27-year-old Cuban truck driver who was residing in Texas at the time. This accident happened in 2019. He was coming eastbound on Interstate 70, going down a major hill coming into Denver. And he was going too fast. All he drove was intrastate around the state of Texas. So he wasn't really familiar with any of the hills or running mountains or anything like that. So yes, it's the dispatcher's fault and some of the company's fault. Don't get out of any blame on this, let's say. And I'm doing this off the cuff. This is not scripted. I'm just talking about the story in this edition of the Rookie Roundtable. And this will try to be, when any top story is going to happen, I'll try to have it every week, but not necessarily. So, back to the story. He came flying down the mountain, did not downshift, or attempted to downshift too late, passed 3 runaway truck ramps, no skid marks, and traffic was stopped at the bottom of the mountain, and he piled into 27 different vehicles. Now, according to the story that is out there, he got it on multiple counts. He was up to 41 different felony charges, and 15 of those were dismissed, and then the other 26, I believe, he was found guilty of. And it was a variety of charges, including, pull up the story here just a second to refresh my memory just a little bit because I don't want to misspeak. He was A lot of them were 4 counts of vehicular manslaughter. And I'm sorry I didn't have the story pulled up ahead of time. My bad. Tried to get everything right, and I still screw up. So next time will be better. Here it is. And he was found guilty back in October of 2021. And in vehicular homicide was 4 of the counts, 6 counts of first degree assault, 10 counts of attempt to commit assault in the first degree with extreme indifference, 2 counts of vehicular assault, which is reckless, 1 count of reckless driving, and 4 counts of careless driving causing death. And the 15 counts that he was not found not guilty on were criminal attempt to commit assault in the first degree. He pled guilty, of course, to all 41 charges. He was crying during his sentencing. I feel that and this is my personal opinion because this is my show, that the judge was in the right to give him a 110-year sentence. As we all see in the news, and it's made the New York Times, that there's a petition going around of over 1 million signatures that he trying to ask the governor for clemency, the governor of Colorado, which in being a paralegal background, the governor has nothing to do with it. It's the legislature that passed the law. And for all of you newbies out here that never been down hills, let this be a lesson to you. You don't go flying down a mountain and then kick it into neutral, like we used to do in the old days. Because you never know what's down at the bottom of the mountain. If somebody had a bad accident, which this was the case, you're going to come flying around the hill and lose control, and you're going to plow into somebody. He tried to hit the shoulder, but somebody was broke down on the shoulder. His excuse for not taking the runaway ramps was he didn't want to damage the equipment. But you'd rather kill people instead? Really? And he's saying his wife addressed the court on her husband's behalf. It's hard to live with this trauma, how she can't sleep. She's thinking all the time about the victims. He said in English, in a lengthy, tearful message moments before sentencing. He's begging for forgiveness from this torture and pain. We do have the death penalty, you know. I'm not a murderer. I'm not a killer. Well, you know, you should have thought about that before you didn't take a runaway ramp. And I'm sorry about all the ums as well. Here in the other article, trucking community has spoken out after Colorado judge sentenced him, and they say 25, he's 27. The district court judge, Bruce Jones, told Aguilera that if I had the discretion, it would not be my sentence, but also said that he felt compelled to issue the stiff prison term due to mandatory minimum sentencing standards that is set in Colorado by the legislature, not the governor. I accept and respect what the defendant has said about his lack of intent to hurt people, but he made a series of terrible decisions, reckless decisions, quoted the judge. And also there with the petition, I believe it's here. I pull up the petition. From the petition, quote, change.org petition asking Colorado governor to grant clemency or to offer time served. We all know of the crash that happened on I-70. This is from the petition in Denver, Colorado. Most of us had heard the facts in the case. Aguilera, it says 23, had nothing on his driving record or on his criminal history. He had comply with every single request by the county courts and investigators on the case. He's passed all of the drug and alcohol tests that were given, including a chemical test. This accident was not intentional, nor was it a criminal act on the driver's part. It was negligence, and that's what he was convicted of, negligence. No one but the trucking company he was employed by should be held accountable for this accident. No, we are not trying to make it seem any less of a tragic accident. That is because, yes, lives were lost. We are trying to hold the person who needs to be held responsible. That is for the courts to decide in a wrongful death suit that's going to be civil cases. They could take the trucking company to court, which everybody's forgetting about that. The trucking company has had several inspections since 2017 with several mechanical violations. There are many things Aguilera could have done to avoid the courts, but he took responsibility, showed up, and severely apologized to the victims' families. Whoop-de-doo. Some of the families even offered forgiveness. He is not a criminal. The company he was working for knew the federal laws that go into truck driving, but they failed to follow those laws. But he accepted the load, so he is responsible. He could have turned down the load. I don't know how to run the mountains. And if he accepted the load, yes, he is responsible as the driver of that truck. He has said, back to what's stated in the petition, he has said several times that he wishes he had the courage to crash and take his own life that day. This tragic accident wasn't done with intent. It wasn't a criminal act. It was an accident. It was negligent. Since he has been sentenced, I've changed this to granting clemency or commutation as time served. Don't think so. So he needs to be accountable for what he did. Plain and simple. You can cry and in front of the judge all you want to. That is a clear defense tactic that the defense attorneys use. They want you to see how sorry you are and repent and all this kind of stuff and show remorse and everything of what you did. Well, yeah, he needs to, but guess what, buddy? Too little, too late. Any of us truck drivers would take the emergency escape route ramp instead of killing somebody, because now you have to live with that. Not one, but 4 people died. Besides, God only knows what happened to the others that were injured, and the nightmare of the crash and everything that they have to live with, and the families that lost their loved ones that they won't come back. So, I'm sorry. I don't feel freaking sorry for you at all. We all take this responsibility when we're driving, newbie driver or not. You climb behind that wheel of that rig, this is not your freaking car. You drive that rig with humility. You drive that rig with understanding. It's an 80,000-pound bomb. You don't run around and passing people and clipping people and taking people's hoods off like you're driving your damn four-wheeler. It's an 80,000-pound bomb that's 70 feet long. You're not pulling your boat or an RV. This is just bullshit. So yes, I'm on a rant about this because, they're boo-hooing liberal hearts and everything. Bleeding liberal hearts is trying to get him clemency and stuff like that and have the governor intervene when it's the legislature that made the laws. You should have thought about that when you're coming down the damn mountain at 85 miles an hour. You go down a mountain in 2 gears lower than when you went up the mountain. And he was hauling a load of lumber that spewed all over the place too. He didn't give a flip about that either. So, yeah, it scared the hell out of him. Well, you should be scared. And you should be sorry for what you done. But now you're going to pay the price for what you did. And thank goodness he lost his license as well. We don't need drivers like that on the highway. Let this be a lesson to all of you that drive a semi or want to do a brake check in front of a semi. You will die. You don't play around with an 80,000-pound bomb. So thank you so much for joining me on this first episode of the Rookie Roundtable. I hope everyone will have a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Just don't get too drunk. If you do, don't name it after me. I will see you next year. I greatly, greatly appreciate each and every one of you who tune in to listen to me each week here on the cafe. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe using the link below, or on CloudHub, please subscribe at the top of the page. I greatly, greatly appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. As I said, please, if you wouldn't mind, stop in if you're on Facebook and give us a like on Facebook. Also join our discussion group at Julia's Truckett Cafe Regulars. And if you wouldn't mind, subscribing to our newsletter at juliastruckettcafe.com/newsletter. So thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time. You have been listening to Julia's Truckett Cafe Truckin' News Hour. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Take care. Have a blessed day.